not do this, man. Why? Look, Instagram fingers when they see him. Say it to my face, not an Instagram DM. What it might cost next.
Welcome to the Studio Chatter Podcast. I'm Craig Reeves. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm here with a very special guest, somebody who I've collaborated with for many years. And that is, of course, the artist, the great MC from Flint, Michigan, known as Koowl Fury. How are you?
Good. Glad to be a part of this.
Yeah. So I've wanted you on this show for a while, and I really wanted you on in the first season, but it is now happening in the second season. So it's all good. So you have a new single that is out.
I do.
And it is a record that I produced, and it's called Instafingaz. So you guys can check that out. There's going to be a link below if you're watching on YouTube to the song. So we had a lot of fun making this record. It was definitely your idea.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun making it. Definitely.
Yeah, to make a record really about how people very often forget that what they say and do online can have real world consequences. So I'm trying to figure out what your inspiration was behind the record, because I don't think that I've ever really talked to you about that before. It was kind of like an idea you had. Like, where'd that come from?
Well, I mean, Instafingaz is really, it's a real life, sort of thing. I think we have a lot of people nowadays that don't think about the things they say, and that kind of carries over to being online and apps and things like that. People just say what they say. But the thing is, when you put it out there, like in direct messages and things like that, it stays out there in the atmosphere. If somebody said something crazy to me years ago, and it was only verbal, I would probably forget about it at some point. But when you send a DM or a text message or anything like that and put something negative out there in the universe, it's just out there.
Yeah.
So, this is basically like a PSA, stop
the keyboard warriors.
Yeah. Stop the keyboard warriors. Stop the internet gangsters.
Yeah, because then you run into some real gangsters.
Right. You have to be careful. We have to be careful about what we say and who we say it to.
Yeah. And definitely something that I think people don't realize is that a lot of people get killed over Instagram beefs like these days, right? People,
absolutely,
internet beefs oftentimes go out into the real world and resort in real life violence. I mean, it's kind of like a real serious thing when you look at places like Flint, you look at places like Chicago and Detroit, and, Camden, New Jersey, and places like that, and even parts of Atlanta. Yeah. Folks getting killed out here over shit they said on the internet, over shit they said online. It's like, what people have to remember is that these are real people. I have this kind of mantra that I don't like the term friends in real life versus friends online. I mean, online is real life. Okay. So whenever I talk to people on the internet, I'll say, we meet in person. I don't say, oh, real life. Because when you try to make online or the internet out to be like this fake virtual world that's not real, then you start to think you're invincible. You start to think you can talk shit to the wrong people, and then folks end up at your house.
and that's where I think a lot of people are right now. It's like this space where they can be who they can't be in person. They can be who they don't have the courage to be right in front of you.
Yeah, definitely.
So things can escalate very quickly, when you have this sort of thing going on, and that's how it gets dangerous.
Yeah.
Things escalate very, very quickly because people feel invincible. People think it's a game, think it's funny. And then all of a sudden something happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And really you write about real world shit. I mean, that's kind of what separates you from a lot of other rappers today, because a lot of indie rappers will rap about, you know, trying to, I guess, be like the major artists and write about, you know, the whole rich lifestyle and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I have no problem with that at all. It's just kind of like, you can see what they're trying to do. Like what a lot of indie rappers are trying to do is, it's like, well, I got to sound like the major label rappers. And so therefore I'm going to rap about the same things that they rap about, you know, when in reality, it's kind of like, why not rap about actually being a working class person, or about, you know, actually living the life that you live? I think it kind of comes from this lack of confidence in the marketability of just being a regular person, right?
Absolutely.
But you don't shy away from that.
No. And the thing is, talking about money, you know, all the time, the riches and the big houses and the expensive exotic automobiles and all of that, that's cool. But I really want to see more people talking about relatable things.
Yeah.
Because I think it's cool to hear all of it. You know, I listen to all of it. But the thing is, if I hear something that I relate to more, I would probably gravitate towards that a lot more. So, I mean, it's nothing wrong with being what they call a square, or, you know, a working person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, I still feel like we can all have confidence.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like a king anyway. I might not have the most money like some other like huge artists are, or excuse me, like some other huge artists have, but the thing is, I feel like a king anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I live a good life. I got a good family. You know, I still bought houses, sold a house, about to buy another one, buy cars, things like that. I still live my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be $1 million lifestyle right now. It doesn't mean I'm not striving for it, but I can talk about what I'm doing now, and it's okay.
Yeah, because I think there's so many more people that relate to that. Yet for some reason, and it's funny because there's a lot of movies about regular people. There's a lot of books about regular people, yet for some reason, music just can't be about regular people. It's like music has to, especially pop music in particular, pop music, hip hop music. Like, I think there's this pressure that a lot of artists have, especially rappers, and in some extent, you know, to some extent, R&B artists too. There's kind of this, I guess, pressure to front, you know what I mean? To kind of make your life look more glamorous than what it is.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it kind of seeps into social media, where
it does.
A lot of recording artists, a lot of indie artists want to make their lives out to be more glamorous than they are. You know what I mean? It's that they want to portray this image online of being successful all the time and just killing it every day. And, you know, the female artists, they just woke up looking that way, and the male artists are just balling all the time. And it's kind of like, there is still this mentality in music to where you can't really be real, you know?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where I just kind of look at it all like a big show, you know, sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a big show, and the characters on the show that get the most attention are the ones that are doing the craziest things, or living the most glamorous type lifestyle, or at least putting off that image. So I see why a lot of people do it. I just hate that things have gone this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you do talk about some of that in your music too, because, you know, one of the things that we have a tendency to both do when we're making music is to kind of try to stay original and try to not like jump on every single trend. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of different trends in music, right? It's like, oh, there was the auto-tune generation where everybody was doing the T-Pain thing, and then everybody was trying to sound like Future, and now it's like everybody's trying to sound like Drake, and it's kind of like, you know, let's just and a lot of that is just due to the fact that there's pressure to do it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have felt like, okay, I have to listen to what's currently on the radio and imitate that. Like, there is a pressure to do that, especially given now with playlisting, right? Like Spotify, in order to get on a freaking playlist, you have to basically get by a curator. I mean, that happens pretty much every time you release something. We have to sit there and sell our stuff to curators and hope they like it, and it just becomes a headache. And a lot of the times what curators want is something they feel is a sure thing. It's like, well, if it sounds too different from what else is on my playlist, then even if I really like the record, I'm just not going to playlist it. You know, I mean, that happens so often. And look, I mean, with Submit Hub or whatever, I mean, we, you know, we'll go through it and the rejections are always, oh, this is good, but I was actually looking for something vibey or whatever. And, and it's like, dude, if the song is good, just put it on your playlist, right? I mean, but, you know.
If, you know, a new artist is getting some type of advice, some of the first advice they're going to get is to be original. And then when you do that, you run into these obstacles, you know, you run into these bumps in the road, just like you said with the curators and things like that. But, you know, I think it pays to be original. You know, we can't all be the same. There's room for everybody, really.
Yeah. And unfortunately, these days, it's kind of like the only way that you're going to find success is if curators have confidence in you first. So I know that a lot of Spotify's executives bristle whenever this is said, but it's true. But Spotify curators really are the gatekeepers. They really are. Particularly the gatekeepers for the editorial playlists. And I mean, if you're a hip hop artist, good luck getting on a playlist. I mean, it's next to impossible. I have never actually met a rapper who was independent, who was not on either a major label or a very big indie label, who ended up on the Rap Caviar playlist. You know what I mean? That's Spotify's like top hip hop playlist.
Yeah.
I mean, in this whole thing about how, oh, it's a meritocracy. If your music is good enough, if we just think your music is, I mean, come on, like nobody actually believes that. I mean, you go to the playlist and it's just major artists, major artists, major artists.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like if you're not signed to a major label, then you have to go through these random curators who, a lot of them, you know, they probably don't even listen to hip hop. You know what I mean? Right. But, you know, with the hip hop they do here, it's a certain sound and a certain lifestyle that they want to hear. Yeah.
And if you don't make hip hop in that image, it may be hard for you.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but some people are allowed to be original, though. Others are not.
Right. When you're not big enough, you're really not allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It sucks, but it is what it is. And the people who are allowed to be original, it's like then they're applauded for their genius. It's like, oh, brother. I mean, it's like, okay, Kendrick Lamar is great. Don't get me wrong. But I promise you, if some indie artist were to have that sound before him, like if let's say Kendrick Lamar didn't exist, and then there was somebody else who was just like Kendrick Lamar, you took a clone of Kendrick, and he had to go through what we had to go through, okay? These random white boys on Submit Hub or whatever. The first thing they're going to say is, I'm not feeling this. This is too West Coast or just whatever, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's just like other parts of life where, favorites are favorites. And if you're not, then you have to work a little bit harder or a lot harder to get where you want to go.
Or you gotta play politics. And, if I sound bitter, I am.
I mean, man, we've been grinding so long. It is what it is. We all have these frustrations, I think. And I don't know. We just keep pushing. We just keep pushing through it. One thing I don't want to do is all of a sudden try to be like everybody else and then still get rejected. You know what I mean? Like if I'm going to get rejected, I want to get rejected being me, doing what I do, doing Koowl Fury. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I want to be rejected being the most authentic me I can be.
Yeah. And this is not to say that we don't take criticism. I mean, I've taken criticism, you've taken criticism.
Absolutely.
But it's kind of like, okay, there's a difference between taking criticism in that you're going to help me be a better version of myself.
Absolutely.
Rather than, yourself just isn't right, or who you are isn't going to work, and so you need to change who you are. That, I think, is just problematic. You know what I'm saying? Because I would be the last person to say, oh, I don't think an artist or a producer should ever accept feedback from other people. All right. No, I mean, I always tell people that out of all the artists that I work with, Koowl Fury, whenever I work with him, there are times where he will just have me redo a whole beat all over again. Like I'll send him a beat, and like maybe what y'all don't get. Here's what a lot of y'all don't get, because me and Koowl Fury have been working together for like over 10 years. A lot of the records that come out, it's like you have no idea how many beats Koowl Fury turned down. I mean, like, it is insane how many beats I've made that Koowl Fury's turned down. So I mean, it's not.
I don't know if it was that many.
It's a pretty good number, dude. I mean, like, out of all the artists I've worked with, you've turned down more than anybody else. I mean, it's like I would say. Well, okay, maybe not everybody, but it's up there. I mean, there's a lot of beats you've turned down. So I mean,
and for the people listening, I mean, there's a lot of verses that we've done a lot of times.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of verses that I've completely said, no, you need to rewrite this. So that's I was about to get to that because there were.
And re-record.
Oh yeah. There have been so many times where Koowl Fury would do a whole record, and I'd say no, we need to re-record this. Just no. Like I remember.
Yeah, man, he's a slave driver, man.
Yes. like people don't even know, and anybody that works with me, that's a warning. So if you want to work with Craig Reeves, know that I'm gonna try to get the best out of you. Seriously.
Absolutely. Okay. You might have to spit that 16
times. Well, I mean, that's okay. I mean, all of that's fine, because never in any beat that you've turned down has it been because you just didn't like who I was as a producer, or your sound just doesn't work. Most of the time it wasn't what I was looking for, or it's not the vibe that I'm feeling at that particular moment. And a lot of the times the beat would be used for something else. So it's not necessarily like, oh, this beat wasn't good, or like, I don't remember the last time you've ever told me that a beat was not good. I can't remember the last time you've ever said, I'm just not feeling this. Most of the time when you turn a beat down, it's usually, you're pretty specific about why. It's not like, oh, this beat's good, but I was kind of looking more for this vibe, right? Because there were like for Instafingaz, there was like 3 different beats that I made for that. And all 3 of them were turned down. And I finally made one that I was thinking, okay, this is going to get turned down, and you liked it. So that's the big story with Instafingaz. Such an interesting record. Anybody out there listening, definitely go check that out. Can't wait for you to hear it. When you sent me the last beat, I knew it was perfect. Mm-hmm. Like the beat sounded like how I was thinking and how I was feeling when I was writing the song. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's like the beat, like it just hits you, and it burns. Yeah. You know what I mean? I wanted my lyrics to burn, to sting, and that beat does too. Yeah. So as soon as I heard it, I knew it was the one. Yeah, definitely. And that's just part of the process, though, and I think that's perfectly fine. And a lot of the times when you're working on music, there is kind of that outside feedback that you get. Because, when I'm making a beat, you'll push me to be a better producer. And then, when you're rapping and doing your thing, like, I'll push you to be a better rapper and a better writer. It's like, I'll say, yeah, I think you could probably come up with something stronger there. Or I think you could probably get on that verse a little bit more with more aggression or something like that. Yeah. And then a lot of the times, we re-record it just because it just sonically didn't come out good. Like maybe we recorded on a bad microphone or just something like that. I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff involved as well, but that's fine. So one thing that we ask all of the guests that we have on this show, and I'm going to ask you, is how did it all start for you? How did you get into music? How did you go from a little kid watching the Pistons lose in the playoffs all the way to the great rapper we see today?
Well, I try to.
That's a joke about the Pistons, man.
You know what? The year I graduated high school, they won the championship.
When did you graduate?
It made up
04?
For everything. I mean,
when they beat my Lakers. Is that what you're talking about?
I mean, we don't like to talk about age that much when we rap because for some reason you get pushed out of the way quicker. But, it might have been. It might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might have been. But as far as the rapping goes, like, I think I was probably, I don't even think I was 10 years old yet when I tried to write my first rap. And obviously it didn't go well. I think I wrote it on a piece of cardboard and I looked at it and I was like, this makes absolutely no sense. And then I tried to draw like a little album cover.
What? I have not heard this story. I've not heard this. I swear to God, I've never heard this story.
Man, I used to make these, it could be with cardboard, it could be with notebook paper. I used to draw a design like the front of the album, and then I would put like a track list on the back. I would just make up names of songs and put them on the back. Put like a fake barcode because, at the time.
Barcode?
Yeah, man. I mean, back in that time, CDs were the thing. So I was like designing my CD artwork or my tape artwork. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, from there, every now and then I try to write something. And then I think it was really after I graduated high school that I was actually writing stuff on a regular sort of basis.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't all the time, but I actually tried my hand at recording for the first time after high school. It was a tape. It was like the Nothing But a G Thing beat.
Uh-huh.
And I just tried my hand at it. And of course, every time I would mess up, I just do the whole thing all over again.
Now, okay, yeah. So now growing up in Flint, I would be surprised if there weren't other people trying to rap. Like y'all might have sort of like, because I'm thinking, okay, he might have like tried to join a rap group, like the kids in the playground and all of that kind of stuff.
You know, that came up a time or two, but it actually never happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think back, I'm like, man, like, what if all of us would have been more serious about it? What could have actually happened? And then, of course, I've moved around a few times growing up. So I was taken away from some friends, made some new friends, that sort of thing. So eventually, when we settled here, when my family got here in Georgia, you know, I was about 19 when I got here. Maybe 19 or 20 or something like that. And again, I was get back to my regular writing, sort of kind of off and on for a little while. But I think it was around 2009 when I started doing it like more often. And then like a couple of years later, I was working at a hospital in Atlanta, and I had a coworker that was making music. You might know the guy. His name is Koowl.
Yep.
And he makes contemporary Christian music, and he was telling me about the songs that he would make and about how he was working with some producers. And I was like, cool, man, that's nice. And I would show him things that I would write. And then that turned into another conversation, and he wanted to tell his producers about me.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
He came back and played me the track for his song Human. And we were actually, this was after work. We're in the middle of Decatur at midnight, parked at a McDonald's. You know, I'm in his car in the passenger seat. He plays me the track, and we're just eating cheeseburgers, talking about it. And I went home and wrote something to it.
Yeah, definitely. So for context, who Koowl Fury is referring to is a Christian singer by the name of Koowl. Now, Koowl is a Korean Christian contemporary music artist who I was working with, who me and my brother Chris were working with at the time. And Koowl is the person that introduced us to you because y'all were both working at the same hospital. Is that correct?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. And there was a record that I had made called Human, and Koowl, you know, he had written to it and everything, and we were working on it together, and we thought, how about we have a rapper on it? And originally I was going to get a friend of mine who actually moved out of Georgia to rap on it, but I didn't know he had moved. And so here comes Koowl Fury, who is a rapper who I meet through Koowl.
Yes. And that's how it happened. I think within a few weeks, I met with Virtuoso, your brother.
Yep.
And it kind of just went from there. We had our first studio session. Yeah, I think you told me this sometime later. I think both of you at the same time. I don't think you expected me to really rap that well.
No, I didn't. Because you kind of gave me a rundown of, you know, your experience with rapping, and you said, yeah, I did a little bit, you know, but not a lot. And so I thought, okay, he's not going to be very good. But then when you started rapping, I was like, wow, he's pretty good. And then we came out with your very first single. And the single was called Turn This Life Around.
Yeah.
And you guys can check that record out if you go to Google and YouTube and you type Koowl Fury Turn This Life Around. That record actually did pretty well on YouTube. It got God, I want to say 12,000 views on YouTube. Yeah, it did really well.
That was my baby for a long time. I still love that record, but when you keep recording and doing something over time, you're supposed to get better. So there's other songs that I like better now, but that's still a very special record to me.
Yeah, it was like the first big single, and I was very surprised by how well it went. And the music video we shot with like a Canon T3i.
Yeah, man, it was so raw,
but it kind of added to it though in a lot of ways.
It did. It was perfect. It was perfect, especially in front of the corner store.
Yeah,
it was just so hip hop, man.
Yeah, your biggest hit record to date was one that I think I would probably still say is my favorite record from you, which is GLS. So
love GLS.
That record got 100,000 views on YouTube.
Yeah.
And got 90,000 plays on Spotify. So that record did really well. I mean, we were really happy with that one. And so GLS was fantastic. That one you came out with last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that video. Love the video.
The video I shot with a Blackmagic. It was a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema. We spent like $3,000 on that camera. And it's really actually terrible to try to shoot YouTube videos on because like it doesn't have autofocus, and so it's almost like I got to get another camera just to try to do YouTube videos because I'm going to try to do some YouTube videos. But yeah, it's been a long journey for sure.
Yeah. For everybody listening, this is what it's like being truly independent as an artist and a producer. I picked Craig up. We're driving around in Atlanta. We're driving through Buckhead. And I remember there was an apartment complex that I was thinking about moving into years prior. It was called the Darlington. And the place was actually shut down. I think they were going to renovate the place. And I'm driving and I look, I'm like, yeah, the Darlington is down here. So we pull in and, they're renovating the place. So no one's there. They don't really allow anybody on the property. And that was the perfect backdrop for that video. That's what it's like being a real independent artist.
Wasn't that the apartment complex that they actually kicked us out? Was that the... Yeah, because we tried filming and then some dudes came and said, y'all got to leave or something like that, right?
Yeah. They put us out, but by the time they put us out, we pretty much had the footage we needed.
Yeah, that definitely... And then there was a dude who approached us. You remember that, right? Like some random dude was like, hey, you make beats? There was some dude that went up to me and said, hey, you make beats? And he was like, that's a nice camera, man. It's like, because we were in the wrong part of town. And so it was like, oh, yeah, that's a nice camera, bro. And I'm like, dude, if you don't get away from me.
He was a rapper and producer and saw us out there and walked up on us, which was kind of a little, sketchy at first, but yeah, man, that's real independent artist stuff.
Yeah.
The gun is sitting right there in the car. You're kind of looking around. It is what it is, man.
Yeah, man, definitely. And so I think one thing that that kind of helped us a great deal, a real big part of, I think, helping to improve our sound was recording at a major studio. I think that really, really helped us to kind of set ourselves apart. Because like when you listen to the stuff that you're coming out with, like the vocals in my opinion, sound as good as any major record. And I would not be able to do that without the help of Patchwork Studios here in Atlanta. So if you are in the Atlanta area and you are looking for the best quality as far as recording your vocals for the best price as well, I could not recommend a better studio than Patchwork Studios. I've been using them. Well, me and Koowl Fury and other artists as well. The record that I did with Miri, Save You, we recorded at Patchwork Studios as well with Kevin Chung. It's really like anything that I release where I have control over where the artist can record, I use Patchwork Studio. And I think a lot of artists out there really need to invest in themselves. There's a lot of artists that don't do that. They try to cut corners. They'll be like, oh, I've got this microphone that I bought at, the electronics store or something like that. And it's kind of like you're competing. You got to think of yourself as competing against the majors because you really are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Patchwork is definitely a great studio. I've actually enjoyed all of our sessions there. I don't know. And for all you artists out there listening, man, when you walk into a professional studio to record, I don't know, it's like a different vibe. It's like a different swag. Like, I like to have a nice outfit on when I go in there. Mm-hmm. I just really like to go there and be my best self and give it my all. Not saying I wasn't doing that before, but it's just something different about going to a professional studio, man. Really is.
And I think mentally it can help you too, because you know that you don't want to waste time because you're paying for it. That's the thing. I mean, when you're paying for the time, you're not going to waste it. And it just really helps because the most important part of a record, and I tell a lot of up and coming producers this, the most important part of the record, that if it has vocals, is the vocal. It really is the most important thing. It's going to be what like casual fans are going to remember. And I can't tell you how many, and anybody who watched my Twitch stream, any of the producers out there who watched my Twitch stream, a lot of the times when somebody would present something for me to give feedback on, I'd always hit them with, you need to record these vocals in a studio. Like, you need to cut these vocals on a better microphone, or the vocals just sound rough. The vocals sound, they don't sound clear. They sound like they were recording in a basement. I mean, a lot of times producers would get sick of me saying that. And it seems like there's this culture today where a lot of producers, they don't really pay attention to the way the vocals sound. It's not just about the beat. You can make a hot beat. In fact, a lot of records out there, the beat really isn't all that good, right? The track's not that great, but the vocals are great. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So important. I mean, really, your voice is your instrument. So that's definitely the heart of it.
Yeah. And not only the vocals, but also the delivery. That's another one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think that this was something, early on when we were working together, that you really tried to work on more than anything, was your delivery. Right? Like, this was something that you really spent a lot of time trying to improve in.
A lot of time, because just like the human track with Karam Ha that we were talking about earlier, whenever I listen to that, I always think, man, I just wish I would have told Craig, hey, let's try re-recording it and see what we get, because I like the song, but I don't necessarily think I sound my best on the song. especially compared to what we're doing now.
Well, I mean, to be completely honest with you, I kind of go back and listen to like your very first album, The Era of Koowl. And, you know, certainly I think I listened to that because that album came out in 2014. And
yeah, we've come a long way.
There's some good stuff on there, but I think that we've both grown since then. I mean,
absolutely.
You know, because during that time, I really didn't have as much experience at doing hip hop. Like hip hop was not like a genre that I really had a great deal of experience in. Although just a few years before that, I was like doing Dirty South hip hop and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't something that I kind of ever really made money doing. Like the placements that I had gotten before, the success that I had gotten prior to that was for R&B. I mean, that was what I was doing. I mean, that was kind of where I specialized. And so hip hop was not really a genre that I had a great deal of experience in, but working with you, I've, you know, kind of figured out things that worked, things that didn't, and things that work with you, right? Like I think a lot of my growth was just figuring out what worked for you. Like, you know, I think that was the main thing, because you gotta treat every artist differently. You can't have a one size fits all approach.
That's the funny part, is because you came from, you know, doing R&B or pop, you know, the smooth guy type stuff, and then you get this rapper, and I'm always like, yeah, man, this beat got to be dark and sinister and all of that.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, that's part of it, you know. You gotta be versatile, and definitely working with you has made me more versatile. I can definitely say that for sure. And I would also go as far as to say that a lot of the reason why I was making changes was because of the feedback. So I don't want people to think that getting feedback on your music is a bad thing. You don't grow without getting feedback, but there's a difference between getting feedback and people just telling you, hey, who you are just sucks or whatever. And instead of giving you constructive feedback, you know?
Absolutely.
And there's and what people don't realize, there's a lot of records that Koowl Fury and I do that people haven't even heard. I mean, it's like, you know, there's so many records that don't end up making the cut. You know, it's like, you know, so whenever me and Koowl Fury release something, it's kind of like, there were like 4 other records that we did that just didn't make the cut or just something. So, you know, it's just a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah, there's some things that people will never hear.
You remember the one that we did? I actually really liked it too. The one that was the Peanuts one. It was a the Charlie Brown one. Like, you know, he had done this rap.
It was like
it
was like an A through Z. Like every letter was a female.
It's like, I'm not sure about that, but I actually kind of like that record though. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. Definitely look forward to continuing. You guys definitely need to check out Koowl Fury's latest single. And like I said before, it's going to be in the link below if you're listening to this on YouTube. And Koowl Fury, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this interview with me.
No problem. No problem. Thanks for having me on. I've listened to some of your other ones that you've uploaded, and I was like, man, he has really nice, in-depth conversations. So, you know, I'm just glad to be a part of it, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, guys, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Studio Chatter podcast. You guys take care, and I will see you next week.